Welcome back to Low Key Not a Podcast. I'm Amanda, and today I have Joanna Isaac with me, and I am so excited for her to share her story. Her story is ridiculous. She started in India, ended up in Saudi Arabia, back into America, and then your journey's still going. So first off, thank you for being on here, and thank you for, I know we're going to talk about a lot of uncomfortable conversations, so I appreciate you being on here, being vulnerable. Joanna's going to share a little bit about her, just first off, being kind of all over the world in different cultures and stuff, and because obviously I don't know what that's like, being never leaving Pennsylvania. So, and then also you're going to share a little bit on your divorce and being a single mom and just navigating that, also being a Christian and like having faith through all of that and not letting like lies take over your brain of like, this is, you're doing everything wrong. Like, cause I know that can easily happen when we feel like we're not always on, like, I don't know, I feel like we think our lives are supposed to be a certain way. And when you're not that picture perfect, like biblical story, then you're like, oh, I'm a bad person, or like I'm doing the wrong thing, or God's mad at me. So I am excited for us to dive in and talk about it. If you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about growing up in India and what that was like.
And I'll just introduce myself too. But before that, I really want to thank you, Amanda, for having me here. And I'm really happy and excited to be here and share my journey. And so let's talk. So I'm Joanna Isaac. I am a single mom. I have an 8-year-old who's turning 18 tomorrow. But he's a feisty little boy, very smart, articulate, and it's truly a blessing from God. I live right here in Pennsylvania right now, but I'm originally from India. So I was born in India. I grew up with a big family. So it's just my brother and me, two of us, but we lived in our street. We lived together with our cousins. On my dad's side, he had 5 siblings. And then on my mom's side, she had 7 siblings and their kids. And all my cousins, we all grew up together, went to school together. So it was really a village. We all knew each other. We always had open doors. We were always outside, like, popping into each other's house whenever we needed something from the other family or the other house. There were just no boundaries. It was just open doors, open house all the time, 24/7. It was like having a slumber party every night.
Yeah, that's fun though.
Yes, it was so fun. So even though I had just one brother with just so many cousins, it felt like I had like ton of siblings all the time because we went to school together, did everything together, lived life together. So that was my childhood in India. I was raised by my grandparents, by my uncles, and everyone. Yeah, so that was my life in India that I fondly remember.
Yeah, I think that's like so cool too about like your culture over there because and it's so different, so family oriented and like so tight knit.
Yes.
And even here, it's like funny, even here too, like across the world over here, I feel like I grew up and I only have one sister, and I always like, me and my sister like would like complain to my parents like, why can't you have another kid? Like it's just the two of us. And like as girls, we went through that phase of like, I didn't like her. I thought she was annoying. She thought I was the bratty older sister. But my grandma actually, both my parents worked full time. My mom had to. And so my grandma would watch me and my cousins. And I have a lot. So my one aunt, it's like a long story, but my grandma basically had 9 of us all together. And she would watch all of us just by herself. She would watch us all in the summer. And my aunt had a farm. We would all just go wild on her farm doing our own things. Yes. The boys usually played pranks on the girls. Like, it was
that's why they say it takes a village to raise children.
Yes.
And
oh my gosh.
It's very true. It took a village to raise me and my brother. And I'm very, very grateful for it because it gives you a communal feeling. It makes you see and learn, even as you grow, how to, how do you behave in society? Like in a setting like that and you get to interact with different generations. And so it was, it was definitely a blessing for me growing up there.
Yeah. And then how old were you when you moved to Saudi Arabia?
So I was actually, I would say 4 months or 6 months old. So I was a newborn infant and I did not move to Saudi Arabia first. My parents moved there as soon as I was born. So like just a few months after I was born. Both my parents are healthcare workers. My dad was a radiographer and my mom was a nurse. And they just moved to Saudi Arabia because opportunities came up. They were looking for better economic opportunities to build a future and pursue their dreams for their family, for themselves and the family. So they moved to Saudi Arabia for that reason. But since I was very little, they could not take me with them at that point with, I think, like the visa situation. I'm not sure exactly about the details, but they left me behind with my village that I just talked about.
Yeah.
So that's how like my grandparents, my uncles, aunts, everyone raised me together for a few years. I grew up there in India while my parents lived in Saudi Arabia for a while. So I went to school in India, and every 6 months I would travel to Saudi Arabia. And then I'd come back. So it was like 6 months Saudi, 6 months India. I was back and forth. So I was basically throughout my childhood hometown, when people ask me, where are you from, or where, like asking me about my origin and childhood home. Yeah. It's hard to pick one because it was like 50-50. Yeah. India was my home, but also was Saudi Arabia. Yeah. It's hard to pick, but I had family in both places. Yeah. I went to school in both places. I lived in both cultures. I had friends in both places. So that's how my life was. But I was very young. I would say I was 3 years old when I first traveled to Saudi Arabia. Okay. To be with my parents in there. And we lived in a city called Jeddah. Okay. It's on the Red Sea coast, and it's a beautiful city. I still love Saudi. Both the countries have a special place in my heart. Yeah. Of course, because I have fond childhood memories, but also they've both shaped me to the person I am today. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Are the cultures like a lot different, or is it kind of similar? Because obviously like America compared to India is like a huge culture shock. Sure. So like, are they similar culturally, if that's the right word? Or there's certain aspects I would say are similar when it comes to values that they uphold and traditions. Like I know Indian society culture is very big on honoring elders and everything is about community. You can't do life alone. Everything is communal. Yeah. And Saudi Arabia is pretty much the same way. Oh, okay. But there are differences as in everything from like societal difference, the structure. I would say religion is a big differentiator because, Saudi Arabia is a predominantly Islamic country and India is mostly Hinduism. And because of difference in religion, rituals are different, traditions are different. Yeah. Laws are different. India is a democracy. It's a very secular nation, whereas Saudi Arabia is a monarchy. So they're pretty strict rules that we have to adhere to. And that had to have been hard, like adapting to like the new place you're living. It's so much stricter. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're learning like a new culture, but like you have to like, it's a stricter culture too. So it's like on top of learning the culture, there's more rules. But I think I was so small. I was so little when I started, living both lives back and forth that to me, that was the norm. I didn't see it as a difficult task to adjust. I didn't need an adjustment period or get used to a new culture because that was my life from a very young age, like toddler stage. So I grew up that way, and it just, for me, that was the norm. Yeah. No, and you're like the definition of when people say kids are like, they adapt, like your lifestyle, like you adapted to everything. Quickly, yes. I knew exactly how to be as soon as I landed in Jeddah, and as soon as I landed in India, I could immediately just shift my focus and adapt to culture there. No, and I'm sure that made you like so resilient too. When like because you weren't used to, like, your life wasn't just like a cookie cutter, like same, like there was always something different for you and like different types of people and different cultures. And like, I think that's so cool because it honestly probably made you such a resilient person. Yes, I would think so too. And also I think it prepared me for what God has placed in my heart, like for missions. Yeah. To make me missional minded, because you can't be a missionary or have a mission, be mission minded if you are not ready to adapt to different cultures and meet different people and live with different people under different circumstances and environments. So I think that was like, for me, I didn't know it then, but in hindsight, I feel that was God's way of also preparing me for the future that he had for me.
No, I think that's really good. And I think that's like very profound. I think we all should have be like open-minded like that.
Yeah.
Because I think too, like missions, it's so easy to be like, it's so unknown. Like, because I mean, you can't, no matter how much you read about another country, even another state, as much as you're reading about it, you don't know it until you're living in it and until you're walking in it. Like you can prepare as much as you want, or say someone like a missionary asks you to sponsor them, you don't know much about that. Like you can only know as much as they write in their pamphlet or as much as you read on Google. Yeah. And it's like until you actually are like in the culture, which I think is so cool. And it probably like you probably have such a good mind of it and an openness and understanding of how to reach people and like create true community and how to relate to these people of different cultures. And which I think is so cool.
Really God's grace too. And I remember just even as you were saying that, I remember these scriptures that says, be all things to all people. Yeah. And then the Bible also talks about how Jesus humbled himself to become a human for our sake. And so wherever you go, you have to adapt to that culture to become like them in order to reach them. Yeah. You know, if you're still going to remain an alien or a foreigner to them, there's no way they can relate with you. Yeah. But when you become all things for them or become like them and humble yourself to even a simple thing like dress like them. Yeah. Learn their language and talk to them in their language and learn to eat like them. Yeah. Learn to sleep on the floor like them. And, you know, I'm talking about little small details that do matter when you become all things and humble yourself. It's easier to really break through any heart, like even the most hardened hearts. Yeah. No, I think that's the whole, so true. The whole purpose of mission. Yeah. No, and it is like the word humbling, like it is very like you have to humble yourself or it's not gonna go well. You're right. Yeah, at all. Not at all. But moving forward though, too, so then you ended up in the United States. I can't remember when you told me, did you come to Pennsylvania first or were you in New York first? No, we came to Pennsylvania first. That's what I thought. So we lived in Saudi Arabia for 17 years. Okay. And then in 2002 is when we all as a family ended back in India. Okay. And a big story behind that. But like after we came to India, we had to start fresh. Yeah. And I was entering into college. My brother was entering into college. And my parents were just trying to find ways to continue supporting the family because we had gone through a lot just prior to that. And my mom was still a nurse, and my dad is a pastor now. So he used to be in healthcare, but then he became a pastor and a minister. And my mom really was looking for better job opportunities, and she just applied everywhere. Yeah. And I mean everywhere, like wherever she could go, wherever they would take her, any recruitment agency. And finally, she got an offer from UPMC here in Pittsburgh. So that's awesome. She was the first one to come to America in 2006, I believe, if I'm not wrong. And she came, and a few months later, the rest of the family followed. And so we've now been here for about 19 years. Yeah, that's awesome. Yes. And how was that like adapting? Was America like hard to adapt to? Or because I feel like a lot of people I've talked to, like recently someone from our church, because we go to the same church. Yes. I went on the women's retreat and I met a girl and she was from Ghana. Oh, wow. And I don't know if you've met her yet, but she was saying how coming to America, it was so hard for her at first because she said, like, one, the community aspect we lack very much. I was going to say the same thing. My first culture shock when I came to America was the first thing I noticed was we would go open the doors and go out and there's not a single person outside. That's what she said. And like she said she was so used to like talking to your neighbor. But she said some places in this area are very good at like you can say like at least where I live here in Beaver County where we're recording this currently. I think it depends on the neighborhoods or community that you live in. But yeah, and then I forget what was the other thing she said was we're very like
Oh, she said like the like bullying each other and like the dramatics of like my things are nicer than yours. Like she said like that, like she never really struggled with that. And she said like in Ghana, she was telling me that like in school, like you got like beat as a child. Like the teachers were allowed to beat you. Like you did not talk back. You did not like if you bullied someone, like you were in trouble. Like you got a spank for it. Yeah. And she said, beat's probably not a good word. They weren't like beaten, but they would get they would get spanked in school. And she said like coming here, she's like, I hear all of this of like bullying and like kids being like suicidal. And she was just saying like that's like a lot. Like she was like, it was for me, I was like so confused as to why that happens here. And I was like, I guess I'd never really like thought about it, but I guess bullying is actually like probably really bad here. And I just grew up used to it, and I didn't realize the world wasn't like that. Yes. Like people got in trouble for it other places.
True. And that's the same thing, same case back in whether it was Saudi Arabia or India, because I think a lot of the Eastern cultures like Africa and Asia share a lot of similarities, especially in the communal aspect. And so that is why for many of us moving to America, that is like the first culture shock that what I noticed is this is when you look at like a spectrum, this is extreme individualism here. Yeah. It's all about me. I consume, and isolate yourself, my time, me time. Yeah. I never heard of me time till I came to America. That's not a thing. That was not a thing in our culture because growing up, I didn't have my own room. You know, it was all like 5 people sleeping in the same room. Yeah. And cousins on the floor, grandparents on the cot or bed. And that's how it was. So I think in the East, it's the other end of the spectrum, which is extreme community, like just communalism again. So it's individualism and more community there. Yeah. And here I felt like community had to be forced. Yeah. It didn't come naturally, whereas in the East, it's very organic. That's how you lived.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like awkward here too. Like, I feel like when you're like, I don't know, me and Matt have such a big heart for like having people in our lives, like uplifting each other and encouraging each other and like having community. And like, I feel like our church before we went to Hill City was very much like, it was small also too. So it was a lot easier, but everybody was just like we would have like nights in our house where we would just worship and people would come over and we'd worship God together. And like, it was just so like communal. And then it was like, it kind of like went away for a little bit. And then we had to go to find a new community. And I was like, why is it so awkward to find a new community? I was like, why is it like such a weird, like it should, like we're human beings. Like we're all like, we all have the same end goal of like just wanting to be closer to God. Like why do we as humans make it so awkward?
Yes, yeah. And I would say that even within America, if you will see the difference when you go to different churches, especially if you go to certain Eastern oriented churches, like an Indian church or a Nepalese church or an African church. It's very different from going to like a regular American church. Yeah. Like my dad is a pastor and he pastors an Indian church here in Pittsburgh. And our church family there is very much the way we are back in India. Yeah. So the service could be for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. But after that, we all just hang out. We don't even look at the clock. And by the time we look at the clock, the day's over. We're like, oh, it's 4 p.m. We got to go home. Like, they were just hung out. Like, the kids are playing and we're having lunch together and then talking and sharing, laughing. It's like having family dinner, but in church. Yeah. And whereas I've seen in most American churches, you walk in the moment like the clock hits. Okay, once it's like service is done, this next second, sure, people hang out for some time to say hi, but I think everyone's like very quick to like go home. Yeah. Again, it's just different communities.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask you like what was... like how different like in like your Indian churches from our like American church. So like is the worship, do you guys just sing like hymns? You just sing like, do people write songs? Like how do you guys do worship at your dad's church?
Well, we worship in both English and in our language, which I speak Tamil. because I come from the south of India, from a state called Tamil Nadu, and that's the language we speak. And interestingly, it's like trivia. I just like to say it.
No, I like it.
One of the ancient languages, Latin.
Yeah.
But not many people speak Latin except for in some of the, I believe, in Catholic Church, and maybe it's used. But it's, for the most part, it's obsolete. No one uses Latin anymore.
Yeah.
But Tamil is one of the ancient languages like Latin, but it's still spoken today. And I thought that's a cool trivia.
No, that is cool. I'm so like uneducated. I was like, in my head while you were talking, I'm like, what, while you were like speaking like of your church and stuff, in my head, I'm like, what language? Like, is it Indian? Like, what is the language? Like, that sounds so dumb to say out loud. But I was like, what language do they speak? Like, we're not taught that.
We have multiple languages in India. So it's not one, not two. I'm not even saying that multiple dialects. It's different language from state to state.
Yeah.
Grammar differs. Everything is different. So that when I travel to another state from mine, I have to end up speaking in English even though we're both Indians, but my friend is from a different state than me, and we don't know each other's language, so we end up speaking in English. So.
Oh, that's kind of crazy. That's actually cool. I've never known that.
Yes.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah, so like in my dad's church, we sing both English and multiple Indian languages.
Yeah.
Worship is mixed with, like, we have old school hymns, but we also have modern contemporary worship.
Okay.
But the thing is that it's again communities, so all generations, all ages are involved in the service.
Oh, that's awesome. You guys like don't have childcare. The kids sit in the service.
They do, but we do also have like kids church, but it's a very small, intimate community church. So it's a small building, but the kids go downstairs for some time, and then we all join for lunch.
No, yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I love that you guys have lunch. That's like, I don't know, that's like cool. Like that you guys like literally, it's when you go to church, you spend the day together.
Yes.
And it's like actually like intimate, like connection with one another. It's not just the like, hey, how are you? Like, how's your week? Good. Yep, good. Everything's good. Like, and then you just like, you know what I mean? Like the quick like answers. Cause usually we're like, I know how we are. We're always getting there. Usually we're right on the dot, 5 minutes late. Literally 10:05 we get there usually every week. Or we'll get there on time. But then on I'll have a meltdown. We can't get her out of the car. So we still walk in at 10:05. But and then we're like quick because I'm like, oh, I want to hear worship. Like we gotta get in there. Like I gotta walk her back to the kids and drop her off. And I gotta come back in. And so like, it's nice that you guys like spend the whole day, and it's like, it's literally God's day. Like, and it's like a real, you slow down, and it's a family day. Like, you know, like a family day.
Yeah.
So that's why I think really cool.
Like these Indian churches feel like family. They're all family. And I think for them, for us, it's a taste of home. Yeah. That we miss back in India. So that's the community's all we have. So that's why people don't mind hanging out as long as they can. No, I think that's great. So I know that you and your family were a part of an underground church in Saudi Arabia. What was that like? Like when I hear that, I get like, I don't know, it sounds kind of like, oh, like that's a little scary. Right. When my family first moved to Saudi Arabia, well, mainly my parents first moved there. As I mentioned earlier, it was all for better job opportunities, better future for our family, to build a better life for us as the children. But my dad never expected that God had completely different plans for him. Yeah. He had a very radical encounter with Jesus, and he gave his life to Jesus. He was transformed. He was born again. And as soon as he gave his life to Jesus, God immediately placed a call on his heart and a burden to start church in Saudi Arabia. So to give you just a context on Saudi Arabia and why that was such a big deal is because in Saudi, and I'm talking about like this is 80s, 90s, so things may have changed a little bit now. But then in the 80s, it was very strict. And as I said, it's monarchy, and they followed very strict Islamic law, Islamic rules. So their churches were not allowed. There was no freedom of worship, especially for any other religions. So Christianity, of course, was suppressed, and no gatherings, prayer meetings, Bibles, gospel preaching, nothing was allowed. And basically it was a crime. And if you were caught doing any of these things, they could capture you, arrest, put you into custody, or keep you in life imprisonment, or even sentence you to death by execution, or public, corporal punishment. And there were so many, you basically risking your life doing this.
Yeah.
So when my dad got that calling, obviously that's a huge risk.
Yeah.
He was like, what?
You had to like put your family through that. Like that's hard.
Right. But if you talk to my dad, he'll say that to him, when God placed that burden, he did not think about the risks and the dangers. For him, it was all about the zeal for the Lord, to serve God. He just wanted to obey. So he said yes immediately without hesitation, and he just walked in obedience. So he started a small house church with just, maybe 5 Indian families.
Yeah.
And then for next decade, over the decade after that, it just grew and multiplied, all by word of mouth, because we can't put the word out there.
Yeah. You need to be careful who you tell about it.
Mm-hmm. But everybody was taking a risk by sharing it by word of mouth. But people were flocking to the underground church. We had several house churches. We met in different places. We kept rotating. The church just flourished. We had prayer meetings, fasting prayer. We had baptisms in the Red Sea, smuggled Bible. So as a kid, for me, all in this environment, growing up, as I said, to me, that was just normal. So I didn't know we were taking a risk. Yeah. For a long time, I didn't even grasp that, because I was thinking, this is what we do. This is normal. This is, but then it was only as I grew older and went back to India and saw like how churches there in a secular world, with no restrictions, then it struck me that, what we're doing in Saudi Arabia, that's actually something bad. We could end up dying for it.
Yeah.
But I would say for a long time as a kid, I thought this was thrilling.
Yeah.
Felt like you're on a thrilling adventure ride. I did not understand the gravity of the situation till I matured into my teenage years.
Yeah.
When I became a teenager, I think I started reading the Bible for myself, and I started understanding, becoming more aware of my situation and just everything around me. And I would often doubt or even question just inside my head, not even question my parents, because again, in our culture, like, it's not like you can question your parents or talk back. So just internally, I would have a conversation with myself and wonder, why are we doing this? Mm-hmm. There's no need for us. I mean, we came here for a job. We could just work, earn money, and live a lavish life, and that's enough, live a comfortable life. But I was just observing my parents, and I saw how faith in God was so important to them.
Yeah.
That was the foundation. Everything that they built their lives on was on Jesus.
Yeah.
If they did not have Jesus, they did not have anything else. And so that's how they lived their lives. That's how they served God in that country. And that inspired me for sure, and shaped my worldview and faith. Again, it still did not personally convict me for a long time till I turned 16.
Yeah.
And when I was 16, I saw, like most teenagers, I'm sure teenagers are the same everywhere, no matter what culture.
Yeah.
So we all have a streak of rebellion, right? Like we want to go against the norm.
Yeah.
So
I want to prove that, like, they're saying we can't do it, but we're going to prove that we can do it.
I want to do it my way.
Yeah.
This is my life. Okay, let me live my life. So I went through that phase too.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't have to live this way. I don't need to believe what they believe. I don't have to live in this culture. So I had that streak of rebellion, a lot of confusion, a lot of doubts, especially because I was going back and forth between India and Saudi. So I was seeing some differences, like how free it was here and how restricted it was here. Yeah. And when I say free in India, of course, India too, as a very conservative culture, has its own restrictions.
Yeah.
But compared to Saudi Arabia, it was a bit lax. And and even in India, we did have persecution. Christians are still a minorities there, and it's not easy even getting to church and without being called derogatory terms for converting to Christianity by our own people. So in both countries, we faced challenges, but comparatively, India was a little better. So that was how I saw it, and so there was a lot of confusion. But then it just, for one fine day, it's not big. I would say that I just realized, like, woke up and realized I just can't carry this burden alone. I can't do this on my own. This thinking process that I was going through, saying this, I can do my way, I can live my life in my terms. It wasn't working. Yeah. And so I was like, well, why not try God? Why not try Jesus? I love that. And I went through a lot of trauma as well with childhood, just with two countries and a lot of things that I was witnessing. And for me, I needed God at that point. I was in my lowest point, and I turned to God and said, okay, God, you're the God that my dad preaches about. And if you are a God of love, I'd like to know you more. And I'm sorry. And forgive me. I repent, and I turn to you, and I turn to Jesus for help and to save me, and he did. And so that was, I would say, my first, I guess that day would be my born again experience. Yeah. There was no one who led me in a sinner's prayer. I was not in a prayer meeting or a crusade. It was just me alone in my bedroom. Just talking to God. To God. Nothing crazy. Well, at least that day I was talking into thin air, hoping that there's somebody out there hearing me out. Hopefully he hears you. Yes, and he heard me. But strangely, like I imagined, now that I've become a Christian, like the burden would be lifted off and everything would become easy. Yeah. But that's when I faced my first test of faith. Like at 16, I gave my life to Jesus, and a few months later, my dad was captured. Yeah. And thrown into prison. So he was imprisoned. He was there for 7 months. He endured a lot, tortured, interrogated. Yeah. And so that's our persecution story in short. For 7 months, our family was scattered. My mom was in hiding. But despite all that we went through, for me, that's when everything I had witnessed and watched and learned for years, not just from my parents, seeing God move in the underground church, hearing the words that were spoken in church, preached, and hearing the things that my parents have personally spoken to me and my brother, preparing us for this day. Yeah. When we were little, they would talk to us about persecution. They would talk to us about the risks we are taking. And they would say often that, if something like this happens one day, we should never deny Christ. Yeah. And of course I nodded. Yeah, okay. Because, what else do you say? So I would nod my head, but thinking, because I guess it didn't seem real. Yeah. I know they kept telling us that something like this could happen, and if we could get captured, and if they find us out, but it just didn't click like that can actually happen. Yeah. It felt more hypothetical. Like it's a hypothetical situation. If this happens, do not deny Christ. Like, okay, cool. But I feel everything that they had been sowing the seed consistently, diligently for 17 years into my life, that when it actually happened, I needed it that day. Those things that I needed, that reminder that day. Everything that I had heard from my parents, everything I had seen in the underground church, finally made sense for the first time. Yeah. Like it didn't make sense to me when I was 5, 8, 10, 11 years old, 12, but it made sense to me at 16. And I say that because I think it's very important for Christians to know that even when you feel like you're not seeing results, or you're not seeing the fruit of your work, even for parents raising children in a very secular culture that is increasingly hostile to Christianity, I always encourage, don't give up. You may not see the result today, but 10 years later, you'll be glad that you kept saying it. Yeah, no, that's good. Them, so,
and I think too, like as a parent, a parent who wants their child to follow Christ for all of their life, like you listen to that and you're like, your parents did such a good job, like of that. And that's like a lot of, like, as a parent, I feel like that's like such a heavy weight of like when my child's on their own or when they don't have me, when something bad happens, like, was their faith real? And was what I was saying, was I doing a good job? Like, was it soaking in? Was I putting Christ in the center of everything we did? Was I good, like, was I a good witness to my own children? And I think that's like, hearing that, that's awesome that they sowed that seed into you and your brothers so much in your family that you guys, it sounds like, for the most part. I mean, and too, like, you're always questioning God. I mean, that's just like, to me, that's like a part of your relationship with God. And I even think, even with things we see, like even though we don't see God, like even things we see, like my husband or my daughter, like we still question things, because I do think God created us with that. Like, he was today we went to a business like networking group, and the guy said, and he was a Christian, and he was like, our creator was creative and he created us with creativity. And I like never heard that before, because I always like joke when people say like, oh, you guys are creative because you have a marketing company or a media company, and I'm like, no, that's Matt, that's not me. But hearing him say that, I was like, yeah, like, we are creative, and like God was so creative that he created each of us to have our own creativity. And like, that's why we question things. Like, those questions aren't what's wrong with our faith. Like, those questions aren't what's wrong. It's where our heart is at, and what happens when we hear the answer to those questions. And like, I always say, like, I'm the biggest question. I love asking questions. I always say, if that was my gift, that's my gift, is asking questions.
Yeah.
Cause I always like, I don't know. I always feel like I never know enough. So I just like to know more. And I think though that, like, for a long time I struggled with, like, I don't have faith because I like am questioning things. But no, like, you are allowed to ask God those questions. Absolutely. And teaching your kids to ask those questions, and like, every question is right. Like, in God, and teaching your kids to sit and be able to ask God those questions, and to teach them to wait on his answers, and to know his answers, and how to search the answers in their heart. And I think that's like so important. I think that's so cool. I will
add to that too, that something I've learned is this difference that we need to see between questioning God and asking questions to God.
Yeah.
You can ask questions. God welcomes questions, and he's happy to answer and show. And actually, all of his answers are already revealed in the scripture. Yeah. So if we need any answer, we just turn to the scriptures. It's all there. But that's different from questioning God. Yes. When you're questioning God, you are challenging his sovereignty and authority. Yeah. And that's the part I've learned to be very careful with. Like, at this point, am I just asking a question to God, genuinely out of curiosity, to really learn from him, to really hear from him? Or am I just questioning him to challenge his authority?
No, yeah. And I think too, the thing that I feel like, and I could be completely wrong, so you can correct me, but the thing I feel like is really taught, like, when I talk to a lot of our friends that are missionaries, and to people that we've been connected with, like you, that are from like countries that are not America, is that here it's like, we're almost like, we're not like, the fear of God has been taken out of our culture almost. And it's not that like God's like should be this like big scary like God or being up in heaven that just like is like, you need to listen to me and obey my words. But it's like, I almost feel like we've lost that in the we don't really get to witness that, and like we almost like take it out of our. It's almost like we don't talk about it in church.
Yes, and you know, it's so important. Hit the nail on the head, because I was just this entire day meditating on the fear of the Lord. Yeah. So I feel like, this must be the Holy Spirit moving here. Because I was thinking about, if I remember a question someone asked me about what is the difference, or what do you see is different between the church in America and the church in the East? Or what would you encourage the church in America to work on from your experience growing up in an underground church? And I was thinking I would like immediately say fear of the Lord. Yeah. Because, and when we say fear of the Lord, I think people could misunderstand it as being afraid of God. Yeah. And like, there's God is this slave master up there sitting in heaven and on his throne with a whip, and then punishing us when we do something wrong. No, I think fear of the Lord it's a reverence and holiness. And when you fear God and know him as who he is, in his majesty and sovereignty and his goodness and his holiness, you are in awe of him, and you revere that and you respect that so much that you will not want to sin.
Yeah.
You will not want to do anything that would go against his nature.
Yeah.
So that is really what fear of the Lord is. And you are spot on about that. I'd love to hear more churches in America talk about fear of the Lord.
And I think too, like, I even think too, it's almost like when we talk about that too, we also like, we don't know, like, we're like, how do I get there? Like, I can read it and like, how do I get to like fear the Lord, but not be afraid of the Lord? And I don't know why. Like, do you have any advice for someone who like is listening to this right now and they're like, what you're saying is so spot on, but like, how do I get there with God? If that makes sense. Like, do you have any advice to how can I have the fear of the Lord in my life where I'm not like afraid of the future and I'm not afraid of like what he does, and I don't like, and I'm not like God just like puts these bad things on. Like, God's not causing me to like wreck into the person in front of me because I sinned this morning. How do you get to the spot of God is God and he is a sovereign God and he is the Lord of my life? And like, how do you have any advice that you'd want to give someone who
I can just share from my experience? What I do is that,
I love that.
And this may be for someone out, watching this or hearing this from objectively or outside of, like, say, not Christianity, like not someone who is not a Christian.
Yeah.
This may sound very fundamentalism, like, it might sound like extremism.
Yeah.
This is too fundamentalist,
No, yeah.
But the only way to have fear of the Lord is to live a radical life of Christianity, which is abiding and being rooted in God's word.
Yeah. So true.
And what I mean by that is there's no source of truth except his word.
Yeah.
Not what you see on TV, media, social media, not what you hear from people, not what the world projects and says, not what you hear in the music, not what you see in the movies, not what your friends say, not what's the latest culture or latest trend.
Mm-hmm.
It is what the Bible says, and the Bible never changes.
Yeah.
Trends change, but the word remains the same and constant. And when we say word, yes, there's a written word, which is the Bible that we all have access to, but the word is Jesus, because the Bible says the word became flesh. Jesus is the word. Jesus is who we need. Mm-hmm. So he is the source of truth. That's why he says, I am the truth. He does not say, I will show you the way to truth, or I will show you what the truth is. I am the truth. Truth is personified in Jesus. And Jesus is the word now revealed to us in written form, which is the scriptures that we have. And I am someone, I'm like, I have to be so consumed with God's word throughout the day, 24/7.
Yeah.
No matter what I'm doing, constantly being in his presence and remaining in his presence, because I know even for 1 second, if I take my eyes off Jesus and take my eyes off the truth, I will fall immediately, because I know my weaknesses. I know how far I've come, and I don't want to go back to where it used to be.
Yeah.
And so I can't afford to stop being so radical. I can't afford to take even that 1 second off, like time off. Let me just disconnect from being so Christianese and let me just kind of relax and have fun and, dabble with things of the world. Yeah. I just can't do it. I just don't have time for it, because I know if I do it, it starts with that 1 second and then it'll end up being weeks and months and years. Yeah. It's just like any other habit that you do, right? Like you decide you take one peg, or just like one shot, but then that'll end up being, over the years, it'll become a habit and an addiction. So I just don't want to give room for myself to fall into that trap. Yeah. And so for me, fear of the Lord is just constantly being consumed by his word, which practically speaking, I will have the audio Bible on in the car when I'm driving, or when I'm at home, songs, hymns or worship songs being played. While I'm cooking, I'm just in conversation with God. When I pick up my son from school, we're talking about God, talking about lessons we learned today in school that maybe how do we can we look at it from the biblical perspective and see what does God say about this? What does God say about what your friend did today? What does the Bible say about what you experienced in school, like in gym class today? So everything, it comes back to the truth. Everything comes back to Jesus, comes back to the word. And that's how radical and how consumed you have to be with the presence of God and with the word of God. And that will automatically, just naturally, you just start walking in the fear of the Lord.
Yeah.
I don't know if that made sense. I know that was like a very long-winded response, but I just didn't know how else to explain that.
I think it's so good. It's so realistic. And like, I like how you said too, like making sure your habits are like godly habits and not, because there's so many, like, I feel like too, like habits are such a big, that's like a whole other topic of conversation is that it's so easy to be focused on like other things when you're putting your time and energy into things that are not of God. And like I get in moments where I'm like, oh, like I need to watch TV. I need to watch a movie. I need to relax. And it's like, what if like we just, that relaxation I found in like reading scripture at night when like and I went to bed instead of putting on the TV. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's times like that where I do think like that's how, you know, you, like it's a relationship and it works. The relationship works both ways.
Yeah.
So I think that was like such great advice. Yeah. So we're going to end our time here for this part 1 of the podcast with Joanna. She had so many great words of knowledge and just like wisdom to share with all of us. And I really appreciate it. And we are going to have a part 2 where I'm going to ask her questions about her divorce and more specifically what that is like in the church. And so make sure you tune in next week to hear more about that.